And today's conversation, we're going to be talking about single Christians who have the desire to be married. And joining me for this conversation is my new friend, Marie-Eve Dawood. Welcome,
Hi.
Marie-Eve.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. We spent, what, 2 or 3 months trying to get this to happen, this date?
Quite a while. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Some sickness going around and
And,
yep, lots of
and
life happening.
this is great. This is great. Marie-Eve is a woman of faith, a wife and mother, a classically trained flutist, and a Christian author. And she's actually written a book about her journey as a single Christian. Marie-Eve, what inspired you to let the world in on your journey?
Wow. I I think I went through so much as a single person, waiting so much longer than expected to meet someone, to meet a partner. And I got to the point where I felt like I have things to say. And I want the Christian women who are in this situation to feel seen because it's such it's so easy to feel invisible. Like it's such a hidden kind of space. And I really wanted to bring some light to it and say, like, listen, I mean, part of it was just like, am I the only one out here? I knew I wasn't, but I just wanted others to feel like, yes, this is my story too. And I wanted them to see it in black and white and to know that they weren't alone and that what they were feeling is normal and it's okay. And just wanted to bring kind of like a community around it and some awareness.
I also wanted to, and I'll have a link on our website, but show the beautiful graphics on your book cover. And the book is actually entitled Jesus Shrank My Dating Pool, Holding Out for a Godly
Mhm.
Man When It Feels Like You've Missed the Boat. This
That's
is a
right.
beautiful graphic. I don't know who, did you know the
Thank you.
person?
It was a designer who I had different designers pitching for the cover and I had kind of a brief of, like an idea of what I wanted, and she went completely off the brief. And I'm so glad she did because the result is so eye-catching and
Yeah,
really
yeah.
representative. Like if when you look at her face, you really get the feeling of, oh my goodness, yeah, that's exactly how I felt when I was single all those years. Just I'm over it. That look, it just captured exactly what's inside the book.
As you were writing the book, revisiting those feelings, did it take you back to that time? Like, because when I read it, there were times when I felt really, really sad. But you
Yeah.
picked us up because you have such a great, sense of humor. You did pick us up, but there were times though I was pretty sad for you.
hmm I was sad for myself. It's funny, like, you know, uh, even though I'm married now, I identify so much more with the single life.
Mhm.
I used to forget in the early days, I used to forget I was married. And I still identify with it so much that I was even worried that well, once I published this book and I was already married once I published it, that single women wouldn't take it as seriously because they knew I had found someone and I wasn't kind of a part of their club anymore. But yeah, I identify with it so much that I didn't even have to like go back in time and reimagine what it was like. I felt like I was still in it because I was there for so long. And I remember at my book launch, some ladies coming up to me at the end and just in tears
Mhm.
and saying like, you remember exactly what it's like. And I'm like, are you kidding? I feel like it was just yesterday. I still feel so deeply what that just that heart cry,
Yeah.
to God. Why isn't this happening for me? And how can I make this happen? And just like being at your wit's end, but still hanging on to God. I still know what that was like, and all the heartbreak and like the first dates and the breakups, like it was heart-wrenching, absolutely heart-wrenching. I'm so glad I'm not there anymore, but I my heart really goes out to those women who are still living it. It's not an easy thing at
Hmm.
all.
And I think despite the amount of time, if you've waited for 6 years or if you waited for 26 years, I think it hurts just
Yeah,
as much because I don't, looking back on it, I was actually not single that long, but when I was, it felt like a long time.
exactly.
Yeah, so
I
we all
remember.
feel that way.
I think so too. You would think that women in their early 20s are, still optimistic about it, but I've met women in their 20s who are already kind of despondent. And
Mm,
I remember, you know, I wanted to be married before the age of 25, and when that didn't happen, like my world was shattered. And um, by the age of 28, when probably my biggest heartbreak happened, um, I just felt like I was so ready by that age, and
mhm.
I had paid my dues, I'd gone through so much, and here I was. And so, yeah, even at the age of 28, I was feeling that way. And like, little did I know it would take much longer.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad I didn't know because yeah, it's not easy.
And speaking of the weight, um, your relationship with God, did was that a struggle? Were there times when you kind of walked away from God, or were you totally faithful the whole time that, whatever happens, he's with me, he sees me? How are you feeling about that relationship with Jesus?
I mean, I grew up in the church, and you know, me and God are like this, and I've never strayed, but I for sure had those moments of in those longer periods of just, where are you? Where are you,
Angry,
God? What
maybe
are you
angry?
doing? Angry,
Hmm.
angry, you know, bitter, feeling forgotten and abandoned by God, not being able to reconcile like my image of God, of this loving God, and knowing and being told my whole life that He was so loving, and then not having my deepest prayer answered
Hmm.
in the timing that I wanted, in the way that I wanted. That is incredibly painful. And then how do you merge those two things? How do you keep your relationship with God um, positive when
Hmm.
you're hurting so much? And but I think it made it even stronger because I ended up just really throwing myself at his feet, like throwing myself into his arms. And I say that sometimes I was I was beating my fist against his chest, and I was just
Hmm.
um some days I didn't want to talk to him, and I didn't have any words left to pray. I'm gonna get emotional. I didn't know kind of where to go, what to do. Um but I think in the end, because I kept going, I didn't let go of his hand,
Yes. Yeah.
um it made it made it um made our relationship so much deeper. And it's like it made it more about, not about what I wanted, but about his presence, that he
Yeah.
was there with me, what he was giving to me already, what he was to me every day. That's what it became about. And
Hmm.
I knew no matter what, whether it happened for me or not, I knew I could not let go of him. I compare it to putting two colors of paint together, like mixing two colors of paint. And then how can you take them apart? You can't. And that's how I felt my whole life, that he's so much a part of me, that and I'm so much a part of him, that I don't know where one starts and where the other begins, ends.
Yeah.
Um it's just I even if I had never been married or had children, I can't turn back. I have to keep following him because he's everything to me. I don't know
Yeah.
any other way to live.
hmm
Yeah.
And, and that's such a great attitude that there were days when you just didn't talk to him. And,
Yeah.
for those listening, just remember that even when we don't have the words, that the Holy Spirit has the words for us.
Yeah.
So,
I
we,
love
we shouldn't
that.
even be feeling bad about that because there
Yeah.
are times when, you're just going to be in silence and
Yeah.
let the Holy Spirit do his work.
Yeah. I had so many times like that. And I felt like a failure as a Christian because I'm supposed to be praying here every day and, doing my devotions and I just didn't have the words. And one day I
Mm.
realized like God knows exactly what's in here. I don't have to verbalize it. He knows every word before it comes out of my mouth. And I realized it was like he was reading my heart like a book. He
hmm
reads, he knows what's in there. And even just crying, like I think tears are a prayer.
hmm
Tears can be a prayer. Um,
hmm
a sigh, an eye roll,
Yeah.
like any of those things, like he reads you like a book.
God
So
captures all of our tears. Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that because they mean something.
And it's so important not to get bitter. And you didn't. Like you had the sadness, but some people get bitter and jaded.
Hmm.
It's so important not to get stuck in that because that's the enemy.
It's
We
so
we
hard
don't want
not
to be
to.
stuck in that. We need,
I mean, I hope
yeah.
I didn't go there.
No.
Yeah, I mean, not permanently. I didn't permanently become, jaded and bitter and just forget this whole thing and forget God. Um, but yeah, there were definitely some tense moments.
Do you think it's especially in the times when there was a couple of relationships that looked like potentially they could have been marriage. Did you
There was
think
more
at
than a
all
couple,
about
yeah.
preparing yourself for marriage? Because that's what I think about now. I didn't as a single person, but that's what I think about now for the people that are wanting to be married. And not just those who have never been married, but also those that are widowers, widows, divorced, that even if you've been married before and now you're single, even, after divorce, that you need to prepare yourself to be a husband again or to be a wife
Mhm.
again or for the first time. I never thought about that at all, but I
Yeah,
think about it now. And how,
right.
what does that look like? What should I do? I think, you need to look at other relationships, other Christian relationships that look like they're sturdy. They
Hmm.
represent God. Look at those relationships and how those people interact with each other and how they've hung on. Like if you're divorced, how did you guys make it? Ask the
Right.
questions.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I
it's important to do that.
I think definitely, I can't speak for I mean my husband now this is his second marriage. So definitely there's been a lot of um I think there's a lot of work that goes into, yeah, putting yourself in the right mental space for another marriage and, healing and grieving and all that. I think probably the most important thing would be getting ready emotionally.
hmm
Um, and I mean, I know for me as a single person, um, I mean, I used to read so many relationship books. I feel like kind of God kind of prepared me ahead of time despite myself. That's all I wanted to read. Um, and just, yeah, observing my parents' relationship. They're still
hmm
married and they have a great marriage. And that was a great example to me. But at the same time, I feel like, especially in the case of, never married people, I feel like the church puts a lot of pressure on us. See, I'm part of the I'm still part of the club. Um, I feel like the church puts a lot of pressure on people, single people, to like be perfectly
Hmm.
whole before they enter a relationship. And it's true that you need to work on yourself. You need
Yes.
to, have something to bring to the table and be spiritually or emotionally mature and be self-sufficient and that kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of, well, you need to content yourself in God and you need to be, and maybe the reason, like people will say, maybe not in so many words, but maybe the reason why you're not paired up yet is because, spiritually, you're not ready. You're spiritually immature. And I feel like there's actually a lot of healing that can be found in a marriage, in a relationship. Um, it's not just about you working on yourself. It's also two people coming together and healing each other. And love can be a very healing thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes people say the wrong things, eh?
yeah, I had that experience where, before I found someone, it was, you need to work on yourself. You need to be content in God, and you don't need a man. Don't worry about that. Just live your life. And but I really wanted marriage, and it wasn't for selfish reasons. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm sure everybody has a selfish part in them, but I wanted a family. And then after when we got engaged and we started premarital counseling, it was all about, oh, you complement each other because there are things that you might be lacking that he might have. And all of a sudden the narrative changed and it was about, us kind of fitting in together and how that union was so good and healthy. Um, so I think both are important. I think you
Hmm.
do need to work on yourself, but don't wait until until everything's absolutely perfect
Yeah.
before you enter that relationship.
And
Yeah.
know that that person does not complete you. God
Right.
completes us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, when we start to obsess about that other person, um, it's idolizing. Like that person is not going to complete you. You have to be complete in yourself before you come to that person.
hmm
Yeah.
I
And
think go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, and don't try to do God's work for him, because sometimes we settle. This guy meets a girl and she's pretty, like he's not head over heels, but he's been waiting a long time, and you know, pops the
Yeah.
question, no, don't.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah, don't
no,
do
no.
God's work, ask him to help you find somebody, but if your heart isn't feeling it, then if you're not totally in it. You shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't
Yeah.
be in that relationship.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's funny because I let so many guys go by and I used to think, oh, I'm crazy, what am I doing? But I just didn't have that, certitude that they were the person for me. And, looking back, I think, oh, they would have been fine and, we would have had a great life together. But you have to really be honest with yourself. I think that's
Hmm.
really important. Yeah.
And how did it change you as far as the mother that you are today? Any effect on even your relationship with your children?
You know, one thing
Helicopter
is
mom,
that helicopter mom, I mean, they're only four. I have 4-year-old twins. So they're not dating yet, but not for a long time. But I think if anything, people will say to me, like I have friends. I went out with a bunch of ladies from my church a while ago, and we're all about the same age, give or take a couple years. And one of them said, I'm so excited. My last daughter is gonna move out next year. She's sending off our last one to university, and I'm gonna be a free woman. I get to travel. No more kids at home. I'm free. Woohoo. And then and she hadn't known me very long. And the other ladies like looked at her and went, Marie-Eve just had twins, like she's just getting started. And I had a good laugh, but to me, because I'm just entering this stage of motherhood, um, I love every minute. Like I'm
Yeah.
so glad I'm an older mom because I feel like um, if anything, I'm more ready. I have more patience, even though I still lose it a lot. But
You
I I
appreciate it.
I appreciate it so much more. I
Yeah.
savor every moment. It's not like it's yes, it's trying sometimes, but it's such a gift. I appreciate it so much more because I know how the cost I paid to have these kids and to have this marriage and this life. It's not lost on me. I don't take it for granted in the least. I always say like I have problems now, but I would never trade the problems I have now for the problems I used to have as a
Mhm.
single person. It's a real blessing, a real blessing.
And what about your relationship with your husband? What did that wait?
Um,
Did it bring anything to the table or change the way
I mean,
you view being a wife?
if anything, like I'm obviously very sure about my choice because I waited so long and he
That's
knows
good.
that and he feels so um, you know, fortunate because, sometimes I'll get down on himself and I'll say, well, listen, like I waited 40 years, like I'm not just gonna, take off. I'm not I'm not gonna take off at all. It's I really again I don't take it for granted because they say like, oh, you just need one person, you just need to click with that one person. There's so many fish in the sea, but it's complicated and
Hmm.
it's not easy to find someone that is a Christian, number one, that you're attracted to, that is, all those qualities that you're looking for, and that also reciprocates your attraction, like that
Hmm.
also wants to be with you. And then, there's time factors or geography. There's all these things that play
Yeah.
into it. And
Yeah.
it's sometimes it can be really hard to make all those little things um, fit. And so I'm just really I still I'm still surprised that it happened for me. I really thought I would I would be in that same chapter for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be such a beautiful love story that I never could have expected. I thought, no, those things don't happen to me.
But
But it did.
we know God can move mountains.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And he sure has. He sure
Hmm.
has.
He
Yeah,
can move mountains. There was a
yeah.
verse in Corinthians that I wanted to read, First Corinthians 7 and 32. But I want you to be free from concern. One who is unmarried is concerned about the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. And when I read that, I think of it not as like the Lord is in our lives. We're living for the Lord. And in that singleness, in that season of singleness, that it is a gift. Just like marriage is a gift, singleness is a
Hmm.
gift. And we need to enjoy
Yeah.
that. And sometimes we need help to enjoy it, especially if we've been waiting a long time. But God can
Yeah.
help us with that as well. That should be part
Hmm.
of our prayer. Like, Lord, I don't want to hate my life because I'm single. You know, just
Yes.
help me to fill my life with things that I love. I love you, you know,
Hmm.
and sometimes it is your work, it is your friends, it is traveling, but we need to find those things in the season that we're in. And that,
Yeah,
that's the way that verse spoke to me.
I love that.
Yeah.
I remember kind of coming to the realization that because I was always fighting God, like why, why and when and how is it going to happen and is it going to happen and just so unhappy. And one day I realized, well, I'm so they say that God is working all the time and He has something for you. What's that verse in Matthew? Um, Something about looking. It's in the message. I love the message version. Something about looking for what God has for you every day. And it
Mm.
really struck me like, okay, am I married today?
Hmm.
No. That must mean God has something else for me today,
Yeah.
and just
Hmm.
today, one day at a time. And
Yeah.
like God's not surprised that you're still
Hmm.
single. He's not waiting. He's not,
Hmm.
oh, you know, you might be, but he's got something every single day. He's working and there's so many ways he speaks to us and we miss him all the time. But that's okay. He keeps speaking and keeps working.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great way to look at it is that you're not in God's waiting room.
Yeah.
There's something for you today where you are. And
So,
when this season ends, then the next season will begin, and then God will have something new for you. But you're not disqualified from God's plan. Like, how ridiculous is that? But and yet we feel that way. We feel like, oh,
hmm.
I'm missing the boat.
Yeah.
I'm missing out on life. Um, because we have this set picture in our mind of what it should be or when it should happen. But He always has something. Always.
Yeah. We have to believe his word. He's working it out for our
Mm-hmm.
good. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we have to encourage ourselves. He's working it out
Yeah.
for our good.
Yeah,
I don't see it today, but I know he's working it out for our good.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have to, sometimes the encouragement doesn't come from somebody else. We have to do it for ourselves.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And and thank God, whatever season that we're in, whatever we're going through, to say thank you,
Hmm.
even when we don't feel it, say thank you, and the feeling that will come. Keep seeking him, that will
Exactly.
come. You don't feel it right
Yeah.
away, but to thank him.
And
Um,
keep looking for those little ways where he's speaking to you,
mhm.
because they can be very personal, like custom made just for you, those little things that nobody else would notice that only speak to your heart, and that's from God to you.
So to leave those listening with words of encouragement, um, you've already said things that you like we that they don't want to hear. So if we know people, we have people in our lives that we know, their hearts are heavy because this is something that they desire. What should we be saying to them?
I think anything that acknowledges I'm big on acknowledging people's pain,
Hmm.
not to wallow in it, but to just because we have such a tendency as Christians, I think, to gloss right over it. Oh, praise the Lord. God has a plan and
Yeah.
you are blessed and we quote Bible verses all over the place. But really just to sit with that person and to understand, to like feel the weight of their pain and to go, wow, that's got to be a really hard thing for you to deal with. And my heart goes out to you, and I wish I could take that away, but let me just be here with you in it. I think
Hmm.
that's the greatest gift you can give someone who's in pain is to be there with them through it. And you
Yes.
don't need to um, make it better. You don't need to, they might ask for advice at some point, but they don't necessarily need advice. They just need you to walk through it with them
Yeah.
and to listen and to try and understand, even if, you've been married since you were 18, you can still imagine what it must be like.
Hmm.
Um, I had friends like that, and that's what got me through. Um, just knowing that somebody knew what I was going through and somebody cared.
Hmm.
And I think that's the biggest thing I would say is just say whatever will acknowledge their pain and what will kind of buoy them up. Um, Another kind of analogy I like to use is to, when you're when you're just done and you're kind of laying on the ground, playing dead, you don't want other people to tell you it's hopeless, even if you're saying it's hopeless and oh, it's I'll never find anyone. My life will never be, good.
Yeah,
Um,
what's that doing for them?
yeah, you need someone who will keep hope alive,
Hmm.
keep keep their faith strong for you and encourage you and tell you that is God can move mountains, like you said.
Yeah,
And you don't want them to agree with you when you're going down into that spiral. You
yeah,
want them to encourage you while at the same time acknowledging what you're going through.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would say continue to thank him for the blessings that he's giving you every day and for
Yeah.
that spouse that you know that he is sending you.
Yes.
And
They're
you've
a real
asked him.
person.
Mhm.
They're out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lord, if this is
They might
not
be
what you
praying for
have for
you.
me, if this is not what you have for me, let me know that. And if he hasn't told you no, then just know you're
Yeah.
just in the waiting season, and
Yeah. Go for
persevere.
it.
And persevere is doing his work, seeking him, enjoying your life.
Yeah.
Don't make your circle too small because you want to be open to meeting that person. Don't be one of those people who just
Exactly.
goes from their house to their work to church and that's it. Like you got to get out there
Yeah.
as well.
Or that is home and works from home and does Zoom church. Right? You gotta get
Yeah,
out.
because that person is just going to be dropped down out of the ceiling to you.
Yeah. No.
It doesn't work like that. You do have to join a club, a friend invites you to something and you think it's boring, go anyway, because you get, meet
Yeah,
different
it's
people.
hard. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can
That's,
happen, it- who knows? There's so many different ways it could happen. Like this, that could be the next meeting that you're waiting for.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this
I
conversation.
like your optimism.
Uh,
Thank you.
yes,
Thank you. It was so great talking to you.
I hope everybody's enjoyed the conversation, and I wish you well. And I can't wait to get some emails from people telling me about their encouragement and how they have just met somebody. Thank you very much. Join us next week for This Is Better.